Okay, so the New York Times is using Nazi language to describe white men. And this to me is very scary. Take a look at this headline from a week ago. Why does Trump win with white men? And underneath, the gender gap probably deserves to be called a different name. Now, I'm going to break this article down and show you why I think it's so problematic. First of all, it uses Nazi language to describe white men, which I'm going to show you in a little bit. But this is conditioning people to see other people as the enemy. In this case, it's conditioning people to see white males as a kind of lesser person or a kind of bad person. And this is an example of the kind of article that drives division and drives hatred and makes people not trust each other. Okay, so let's take a look and see what the article says. Starting from the top. The term gender gap has a clinical sound to it, like it's an intrinsic condition of our politics. But it did not always exist, and with each recent election cycle, it has become more extreme. If we look more closely at it, the gender gap probably deserves another name. It's the white male gap, or the white male problem. Now take a look at that white male problem that I've underlined. That is the Nazi language. Okay, so here's the wiki page on what's called the Jewish question, which I've linked down below. The Jewish question is the term that the Nazis used when they were discussing the Jewish problem. As you can see, the very first line, the Jewish question, also referred to as a Jewish problem, etc. You can read the article. Basically, what it's about is how they were going to, quote, deal with the Jewish people in Europe. And of course, what they did was the Holocaust. Now, people are going to say, are you seriously comparing white men's life in America today with the Holocaust? And of course not. Obviously, it's not the same thing as a mass genocide. It's interesting, though, that the author is choosing to use that language. And that's something that term, the Jewish problem, is a well-known term in academia. So it's strange to me that nobody at the New York Times kind of noticed that. Hey, you know, that kind of sounds similar to the Holocaust language. Why would an author choose to use that word? Why would an author choose to use that term, the white male problem? And even if they weren't thinking about the Holocaust, even if they weren't thinking about that connection and they didn't realize it, which is perfectly possible, still the way it's being framed, the white male problem, as if like it's not about people's individual ideas as human beings. It's about the way that they were born. Oh, this way of thinking, this is how white males think. This is what those people think. This is how those people are. Well, what if I don't think that way? Or my friends, or my family, or, you know, let's say my white male son, my white male father, my white male husband, my white male boyfriend, my white male cousins, my white male whatever it is. They're talking about you. They're talking about them. They're talking about your family, your friends, your husband, your children, all of that. When they say the white male problem, they're not saying, oh, the problem of people who think this way. They're just saying straight up, it's the white male problem. This is how white males think, as if they're a different category of person, as if they're this kind of other, scary, lesser class of human being. Because when I read this article, that's exactly what it sounded like to me. And if you're a parent of a teenage boy, maybe kind of imagine what would it feel like if my son was reading this article and he saw the white male problem in the New York Times. Keep in mind, this is the same New York Times that a few years ago hired Sarah Jeong, who said these kinds of quotes. We don't need a military draft. We need a castration lottery for white men. Every month we pull a birthday, sort the excess, and snip some sacks, preferably in a big public gathering. Imagine how serene public transportation would become. And then this one, oh man, it's a little sick how much joy I get out of being cruel to old white men. This is someone the New York Times hired as an editor, even after these quotes came out. That kind of language, there's a psychological effect of that. And when, like, you know, teenagers and young people, they grow up seeing that in the media, and the New York Times is considered a very trustworthy mainstream source. So imagine you grow up as a child and you always see things like that. And you see on Twitter and Facebook and social media, these negative hostile messages. Imagine what that might do to someone. I mean, that will condition someone to hate someone for how they're being born. People are being conditioned and trained, especially younger people, to see white men as this kind of evil group of bad people. And that's what things like this do. And that's why language like this is dangerous and harmful. Okay, so let's keep going. Now the bottom half of that page under the red line. Think about what the political map would look like if just white men voted. So already kind of saying, oh, look at how scary and dangerous white men are. We'd have Senator Roy Moore representing Alabama, where 72% of the state's white male voters and 63% of the white women cast their ballot for a man who was accused of sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl, and who faced sexual misconduct allegations from multiple other women related to incidents they said occurred when they were underage. He has denied the accusations. We'd likely have Senator David Duke, who's a white supremacist and a racist, from Louisiana. The entire, etc. Okay, so again, look how evil white men are. Like, they take the two worst possible examples they can find, being a white supremacist and being a child molester. Oh, this is what white men are like. This is how white men think. Like, this is what white men are. Again, like, imagine a teenager reading this, thinking, wow, is that what white males are like? Is that how they all think? Like, that's harmful conditioning about seeing a group of people in a bad way just for how they were born. Like saying, oh, this is how all white men think. This is the white male way of thinking, which is nonsense. Okay, and finally, take a look at the last paragraph, the third paragraph on the bottom. I put the red line next to it. This is basically saying that women are better people than men, and that women are smarter than men, and women have better values. Take a look. Women think about government in terms of well-being of the country, says Melissa Deckman, a professor of political science at Washington College in Maryland, who has written extensively on the gender gap. Men are much more likely to think about in terms of their wallet. The bottom line is, how does this affect me? Wait, so women are more likely to think about the well-being of the country, meaning everybody, but men are more likely to think about their own wallet because of, like, you feel that men are voting a certain way and that doesn't agree with you? Like, how can you sit there and say, well, I think that women care more about other people and men only care about themselves? Because, we did this one study and found that, well, men are more likely to vote for the candidate that I don't like. And for the record, this is not supposed to be pro-Trump, pro-Republican, pro-Democrat, anti-Trump, anti-Democrat, anything else like that. But it's just like basically what she's saying there is like, well, because men vote this way and women vote this way, and not even all men are all women, but that means, okay, well, women care about other people and men are selfish as voters. And that's how it tends to be. Like, but based on what? I mean, like, what if you think that, let's say, for example, lower taxes or higher taxes is better for the country as a whole? And then someone else says, well, I disagree with that. I think your stances on low or high taxes is wrong. And so therefore, I think that you're selfish and you only think about yourself. Well, maybe it's not like that. Maybe someone has a different economic theory than you, and so they're not saying that they only care about their own wallets. They're saying that, hey, I think this is better for the country. Like, how can you just say, like, oh, well, this is like a gender divide right here. Like, women think this way, and women help everybody, and men think this way, and men are selfish. I mean, how sexist is that? I mean, could you imagine an article in the New York Times today saying the opposite? Saying, well, men tend to be more, nice to everybody and help everybody, and women tend to be more selfish. Which is basically what that paragraph said in reverse. Like, that's what that's saying. And this is not some fringe magazine, like some, alternate kind of, this is the New York Times. And this is what people are reading. And to me, this article was just all kinds of messed up.